They asked one of Lena's friends, Maya, to help them, telling her lies about Lena. Maya, believing these lies, agreed. She put the harmful thing in Lena's food. But luck was on Lena's side. As Lena sat down to eat, she accidentally knocked the bowl, and the food spilled on the ground. A hand came and pecked at it, and by the next morning the hand was dead. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled in the heart of an African wilderness, there lived a girl named Lena. Lena wasn't just an ordinary girl. She was like the morning sun, brightening everything around her. Her beauty was so rare that it made the birds sing louder and the flowers bloom brighter. People from neighboring villages would journey miles just to catch a glimpse of Lena. Her smile was a treasure, and her laughter a melody that danced in the wind. Men of high standing, from chiefs to wealthy traders, would visit Lena's parents, bringing gifts of beads, gold, and money. They said it was an honor just to be in the presence of such beauty. Lena's parents, simple farmers, were overwhelmed by this attention. They had never imagined that their daughter would become the pride of the village. Her father, who worked the land with strong hands, and her mother, whose voice was as sweet as honey, treated Lena like a gem. They knew she was special, a blessing from above. In the village, every new day brought stories, but Lena was a story of her own. From the elders sharing tales under the baobab tree to the children playing near the stream, everyone knew of Lena. They didn't just admire her for her looks. It was her kindness that warmed their hearts. Visitors left with stories of Lena, spreading her fame far and wide. However, things began to change in Lena's village. The women started feeling jealous of her. They would whisper quietly when Lena walked by, their smiles turning into frowns. They didn't like how Lena's beauty made them feel less important. The men in the village couldn't stop talking about Lena. They would come home and tell their wives and daughters things like, "Why don't you dress like Lena?" Or, "Lena carries water so nicely." These words hurt the women and their daughters. They felt inadequate because of Lena. Then something significant happened. A man in the village named Jonas left his wife because of something she said about Lena. His wife had called Lena's beauty bad luck. Jonas got very angry, saying, "No one in my house will say bad things about Lena," and sent his wife back to her family. This made the women even more upset. Lena, unaware of all this, continued to live her life. But around her, a storm was brewing. The women in the village were getting more and more upset, and this was going to change Lena's life a lot. The village was not a happy place anymore because of all the jealousy towards Lena. Whispers about Lena turned into stories that weren't true. People started saying Lena's parents got her from the river spirits. They said this because Lena's parents had no children for 7 years, and then Lena came, beautiful like a spirit. These stories spread from one hut to another, growing wilder like a fire. The women, their hearts heavy with envy, started to plan against Lena. They met in secret places where no one could hear them. "We must do something about Lena," they said. "She has taken away our peace." They thought of ways to make Lena leave the village. One day, they came up with a plan. They decided to put something in Lena's food, something that would make her sick. They thought, if Lena is gone, our husbands will look at us again, and our daughters will be noticed. They asked one of Lena's friends, Maya, to help them, telling her lies about Lena. Maya, believing these lies, agreed. She put the harmful thing in Lena's food. But luck was on Lena's side. As Lena sat down to eat, she accidentally knocked the bowl, and the food spilled on the ground. A hand came and pecked at it, and by the next morning the hand was dead. Lena never knew about this. She thought it was just an accident. But in the village, the women were shocked. Their plan had failed. They knew they had to be more careful next time. The village was turning into a place of dark plans and secrets. Lena, still unaware of all this, continued to live her life. But around her, the air was getting thick with plots and whispers. Lena began to feel a change in the air. She started feeling lonely. People in the village who used to smile at her now looked away when she walked by. They stopped talking and whispered instead. Lena felt like she was all by herself, like a lone tree in a big field. She saw how the women in the village looked at her. Their eyes were not kind anymore. They looked at her as if she had done something bad. The men still liked her, but now it made her sad, not happy. She would sit alone by the river, watching the water and wondering why everyone was acting so differently. Her heart was heavy, like it was full of rocks. The village was not the same for Lena anymore. Every day, the women's whispers and cold stares grew worse. They would glare at her as if she was a bad woman. Lena's parents started to worry. They heard things from other villages talk about plans to make Lena leave. Her mother would say, "Be careful, Lena, the village is not safe for you anymore." Her father would look out the window with a frown, his heart troubled. One day, Lena overheard some women talking. They were planning something bad against her. This scared Lena. She realized she couldn't stay in the village any longer. It was too dangerous. That night, she made a tough decision. She decided to leave the village, the only home she had ever known. Early the next morning, before the sun rose, Lena packed a small bag. She took only what she needed: a little food, water, and a blanket. She looked at her parents sleeping peacefully. She didn't want to wake them. She knew they would try to stop her. With tears in her eyes, she left a note. "I will be safe. I love you both." Lena stepped into the cool morning air. She walked away from the village, her heart heavy. She walked for hours, the sun climbing higher in the sky. The village disappeared behind her, and the forest grew thick around her. However, what Lena didn't know was that as soon as she left the village, she was being followed by someone. In the village, there was a hunter named Malachi. He was known for his bravery and strength. Malachi was not just any hunter. He was the most skilled in the village, and many admired him. He was tall and strong, with eyes that saw everything in the forest. Malachi had always noticed Lena. He saw her kindness and her gentle heart. He knew about the troubles in the village and how the women treated her. When Lena left the village, Malachi decided to follow her. He wanted to make sure she was safe. In the forest, Lena found a small clearing. It was peaceful, with birds singing and a little stream. Here, she decided to build a shelter. She found sticks and leaves, working hard to build a little hut to keep her safe. It wasn't much, but it was hers. At night, Lena would listen to the sounds of the forest. It was lonely, but she felt safer than in the village. Lena's new home was simple. She slept on the ground, covered by her blanket. She ate fruits from the trees and drank water from the stream. Every day she missed her parents, but she knew this was for the best. In the forest, away from the angry eyes and cruel words, Lena found a new kind of peace. Malachi stayed hidden in the shadows of the trees. He watched over Lena as she built her shelter in the forest. Every day, Malachi would watch Lena from a distance. He would see her gather fruits and fetch water from the stream. When she was not looking, Malachi would leave things for her. Extra fruits, some fish he caught, and sometimes fresh water in a clean container. He made sure Lena never saw him. He didn't want to scare her or make her think she was not alone. At night, Malachi would stay close to Lena's shelter. He listened to the sounds of the forest, making sure no danger came near her. Days turned into weeks, and Lena grew used to her life in the forest. She didn't know about Malachi, the silent protector watching over her. But one day, everything changed. It was a bright morning when Lena spotted a shadow moving. At first, she was scared, but then Malachi stepped into the open. He stood there, tall and strong, with a kind look in his eyes. Lena recognized him from the village. She was surprised, but didn't feel afraid. Malachi spoke softly. "I have been making sure you are safe. I mean no harm." Lena listened, her heart beating fast. Malachi told her how he had watched over her, leaving food and water. He explained he did it because he admired her strength and kindness. At first, Lena didn't know what to say. She felt grateful, but also a bit shy. They started talking, and soon they were laughing together. Malachi showed Lena how to make traps for small animals, and which fruits were good to eat. Lena showed Malachi the shelter she had built and the plants she used for medicine. As days passed, Lena and Malachi became close. They would walk through the forest together, sharing stories and laughter. In the quiet of the forest, under the tall trees and the open sky, their bond grew into love. They would sit by the fire at night, talking until the stars filled the sky. Malachi would tell Lena stories of his hunts, and Lena would share tales from the village. In these moments, they felt like the only two people in the world. Back in the village, things were not going well. Ever since Lena left, a shadow seemed to fall over the place. The village that once buzzed with laughter and chatter was now quiet and sad. The men who used to visit the village to see Lena stopped coming. The gifts and trade they brought were no more. The village market, once lively and full of color, now had fewer stores and fewer customers. The villagers began to feel the pinch. The prosperity that Lena's presence had brought was fading away. The women who had thought their lives would be better without Lena started to feel regret. Their husbands were no longer lively and happy. They missed the good old days when the village was a hub of activity. The children, too, felt the change. Lena used to teach them English, telling them stories and making learning fun. Now they had no one to guide them. The village king, a wise old man, saw all this. One day, he called a meeting under the big baobab tree. Everyone gathered, curious about what the king would say. He stood up, his face serious. "We thought we were removing a problem when we let Lena go, but we were wrong. She was not just a girl. She was a blessing to this village. Since she left, look at our village. Our market is dying, our children are losing their way, and there is no joy in our hearts." The villagers listened, their heads bowed. They knew the king was right. The king continued, "We must bring Lena back." So the king decided that instead of the men going into the thick forest to bring back Lena, the women, who were the ones who pushed her away, should go and find her. The women, reluctant at first, agreed, knowing they had a big task ahead. The next morning, a group of women from the village set out on their mission to find Lena. They walked with heavy hearts, each step a reminder of their actions that had driven Lena away. The journey was not easy. The women, used to the comfort of the village, found the forest paths rough and tiring. As they walked, they talked. At first, it was just about the task at hand, finding Lena. But as the miles stretched, their conversations turned deeper. They began to share their feelings of guilt and regret. "We never thought it would come to this," one woman said, her voice low. "We were so caught up in our jealousy that we couldn't see the truth." The further they went into the forest, the more they realized how wrong they had been. Lena had been a blessing, not a curse. On the third day, as they pushed through a particularly dense part of the forest, they saw a small clearing. There, right in the middle, was a simple shelter made of sticks and leaves. They approached slowly, their hearts pounding. Could this be where Lena was living? They called out gently, "Lena, it's us. the women from the village. There was a moment of silence, and then Lena appeared. She looked different, stronger and more confident, yet there was a weariness in her eyes. The women saw how Lena had been living: the small fire pit, the woven mats, and the little stream that ran nearby. They realized the courage it had taken for her to survive here all alone. One by one, the women spoke. They apologized for their actions, for the hurt they had caused. "We were wrong, Lena," they said. "The village is not the same without you. We need you to come back." Lena listened, her emotions a mix of surprise, sadness, and a flicker of hope. "Lena, please come back with us," they pleaded. "The village needs you. We were blind to your worth, but now we see. Without you, our village has lost its way." Lena listened, her heart torn. Part of her longed for the familiarity of the village, for her parents and the life she had left behind. But another part feared returning to the place where she had felt so much pain. She spoke hesitantly. "I don't know if I can come back. I was hurt deeply. How can I be sure things will be different?" One of the women stepped forward. "Lena, we promise things will change. We have seen the error of our ways. Your beauty is not a curse, but a gift to be treasured." Lena thought for a long moment, the weight of their words sinking in. Finally, she said, "If I return, I do so on one condition. I will be treated with respect, not just as a pretty face, but as a member of the village with my own thoughts and feelings." The women nodded eagerly, agreeing to her terms. "We promise, Lena." The day Lena returned to the village was like the dawn of a new era. She wasn't alone. By her side was Malachi, the hunter who had watched over her in the forest. The villagers gathered around, their faces bright with smiles and eyes sparkling with joy. They cheered and clapped as Lena and Malachi walked through the village. It was a celebration of her return, a welcome that was warm and heartfelt. Lena looked around at the familiar faces, now shining with genuine affection and respect. She felt a surge of emotion, realizing how much she had missed her home. The bitterness of the past was replaced by a hopeful future. The village had learned a valuable lesson, and Lena had found her place again among her people. In the days that followed, Lena noticed the change in how she was treated. People listened when she spoke, valuing her opinions and thoughts. Her beauty was still admired, but it was no longer the only thing people saw. They saw Lena, the person, wise and kind-hearted. The village began to thrive again. The market buzzed with activity, children's laughter filled the air, and the sense of community was stronger than ever. She started teaching the children again, infusing new life into their learning. And so everything came back to normal in the village. You see, in the end, this story teaches us that being jealous and envious can cause a lot of trouble. It shows us that everyone is special in their own way and should be appreciated for who they are, not just how they look.